Welcome to OTA Live, where we spotlight the brightest minds and stories that matter. Let's make change happen together.
I actually recognise so many people in this room and lots of people that have been very inspirational to me in my career, I can assure you. We're going to be talking this evening about embracing diversity in the modern workplace. And I think, you know, as women, we've got some phenomenal women on this stage. It might be really helpful if we share a little bit with all of you what aspect of inclusion really does matter to us. So I am a cisgender woman. I'm neurodivergent. I identify as black. I'm a sales leader. I'm a vice president at Salesforce, and I lead our global public sector MuleSoft practice. But the little bit about my job that really makes my heart sing is leading our DEI network, which is called I Belong. And we really do celebrate the differences that make everybody unique. So we are not for our black community or our LGBTQ+I community. We are for everybody, because the one thing I've learned about inclusion is you really do need to take everybody with you. So I'm going to introduce our fabulous speakers this evening. We've got Dr. Heather Melville, who's somebody I've admired for a long, long time. Dr. Heather is the CEO and founder of Clark's, and she's also the Chancellor at the University of York, which is my nearest university town. We've got Mosique Lavental, a DJ, producer, who's going to be talking a little bit about why inclusion matters to her and the specific area of focus she's got. And we've got Natasha Frangos, who is the first managing partner at Hayes McIntyre, which is an accountancy firm here in the City of London. So over to you, Heather. Would you like to introduce yourself and share a little bit about why inclusion matters to you personally and which aspects in particular?
So I've been on this stage a few times at Google actually, and every time I come it feels different. Particularly different this time because I had to kind of walk on the stage and pretend that I haven't had a broken ankle, which is quite interesting because we're talking about difference today. And for me, I want to get to a place where we're not talking about being different anymore. What we do, we create a space that you can be who you are with whatever ailments you had. I just shared with Chloe that I'm partially deaf in my right ear. I've never shared that with anyone publicly. I normally can pull myself together and go, talk in this ear or position myself. And for me, I just suddenly had this feeling today of thinking, it's all out now. I'm not ashamed of who I am or what I've got. This is who I am, and I want it to feel that way for everybody else that I come across in the workplace. So I'm proud, I'm black, I'm a mother of 2 grown-up men, I was a mum at 16. I've got a whole host of things to tell you, but not tonight. You're going to read about those later on. What I do want to say is let's get to a place where we stop talking about building inclusive businesses and let's make it inclusive. So it doesn't matter what your ailment is, it doesn't matter what colour you are, it doesn't matter what gender you are, you belong to wherever you're working in or who you live with. So if I just look around this room, this is what society should look in every business organisation, every shop that we go into. Everything, just look at this room and that for 1 minute that will give you a feeling of what true inclusion really is about.
Clap for you.
Mosique, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. No, just to echo everything you said, Heather, you said it so eloquently, but it's so true. As I looked around the room, I said, wow, this is perfect. Completely diverse people, all ages, genders, backgrounds. It's beautiful to see everyone here. So hi everyone, I'm Mosique Lavental, also known as M. Lavental, and I work as a presenter, producer and a DJ. And it's interesting when it comes to inclusion and DEI because where I work as a producer, there isn't the best diversity. There isn't. I make up probably I'm probably the only, am I? Yeah, I think I am. In my team anyway, and the department, the only kind of black girl there, really. I wouldn't say I've been treated any differently, and I'm not going to say a story of, oh, like I'm singled out or anything, because to be honest, the environment is very friendly and welcoming, but it's clear that there is some sort of problem when it comes to recruitment. So I try my best when it comes to other people within our building, because we work in the news building, if anyone's been there in London Bridge, and I meet people from similar backgrounds to me and I instantly make friends with them. And there's like a girl that I met, she worked at the Times, because the Times also works in News UK. And she really wanted to get into what I was doing at Talk. And she was like, I want to go into production. And I was like, you'll learn a lot, you'll love it. And I've actively made it a part of my kind of position to put her forward. She's a fellow, she's African, British African, and I've put her forward now. Now she's working within the business. So it's just little things like that where you can help. You see someone else and you make it your mission to put them forward. And my manager loved her. She's great. She's hardworking. She wants to do the job. So yeah, and that's made me feel a lot more at home, actually. It's weird because, like I said, I didn't feel inadequate. They didn't make me feel different, but just seeing someone else in my workplace, when I saw her, I was like, oh my God, hi. Like, I was like, it felt like we were almost family. And these times I've only met her twice. But it's just that comfortability that everyone deserves to feel. Like, everybody deserves to feel that. So that would be my kind of, my little 2 pence. But we'll talk
really
and
sounds
every
like
day.
you're paying it forward
Yeah.
there, actually.
Yeah.
And actually, that sort of sponsorship that you're moving
Yeah.
into, sponsoring somebody else. Natasha.
Hello, great to be here on this all-female stage, which I'm loving. So as Chloe said, I'm the managing partner of Hayes McIntyre. We're a top 20 in London firm of accountants and tax advisors. I am the first female managing partner, having been elected into the role 2 years ago. So we're about 550 people. Why is inclusivity, inclusion important to me? I guess it's traditionally quite a male-dominated industry, the accountancy profession. I made partner when I was 30. At the time, I wasn't the obvious one on paper to be put forward. You know, there were 2 women that were put forward, myself and one other woman. But all of our colleagues who were at the same level, ready for the next step, were all white men. And we were the only 2 that got put forward. And so I guess I'm grateful for the fact that at the time, they promoted me on merit. They saw something in us, and that's why they moved us forward as a partner. And so therefore now, in leading the business, it's really important for me to ensure that we have an environment, and I talk about it all the time. There's some of my team here, and they know what I'm going to say, that it's really important that you are in an environment where you can be yourself at work. So you don't have to act a certain way, you don't have to hide anything, you can be yourself. And if you're not in that sort of working environment, I tell people you're probably not in the right workplace. And so that's why it's really important to me.
So what do you think are the biggest opportunities then and challenges in sort of a global workforce for inclusion?
Yeah, okay. So I guess I'm an optimist. So if I look at the opportunities, then obviously the flip side of those tend to be the challenges. So I think if we think about recruitment as being one of the biggest challenges for growth in recent times across a number of industries, inclusion brings with it the opportunity for expanding where we're looking for talent. Okay, so it brings that opportunity. Hybrid working, the fact that we can work anywhere, anytime, also brings the opportunity of creating a much more diverse and inclusive workforce, because again, it's broadening that pool of talent that you can fish in to look for your next recruit. I think the fact that we are talking about it more, like, you know, events like this, it's high up on people's agenda. It's no longer, in my view, treated as a silo over here. Like in our firm, we have embedded this into our strategy because tone from the top really matters on topics like this. The challenge that comes with that is not making it a talking shop that has to follow through with action. Okay, so I'm like listening to Monique and your friend, you know, I'm a firm believer in it's important to see what you want to be. So we've got 44% of our management team are women, 39% of women in our business are either senior managers, directors or partners. And I think the fact that people are seeing that has definitely had an impact in the retention and progression of women in our business.
That's really, really great to hear. It sounds like you're doing great stuff. I think for me, Heather, maybe you can answer this. It's more around the intersectionality, so we can attract, we can recruit, we can locate diverse and representative talent. How can we retain them, and how can we really ensure that people do feel able to show up as who they are in the workplace?
So I've known Natasha for years, actually, back from my banking days. So it just shows how small the world is. But for me, I think when we start to think about the clients that you do business with, they want to do business with people who have got strong values and have access to the best people and are diverse. Those RFPs that come through the doors, they ask you a whole lot of questions. And if you can only tick one box, know that you're down further on the list for who they choose. And what I mean by that is they want access. They want to see that you've got access to all the talent. I am the Chancellor of the University of York. I am the first black person, so not woman, to have had that role. I am not there. I'm not there because I'm black. The amount of people I have to say, I'm not there because I'm black. I'm there because I was the best person to take them on the journey that they want to go. And that means to integrate them into businesses, because academia are not very good at doing that. They're great at research, but also to make sure that we can get some of the awesome talent that sit in other places around the country who would not think of going to the University of York. So to make this real, 2 weeks ago I had lunch with a partner, with a senior partner of a big professional services company, and he said to me, I wish I had known that you were at York before. He went to York, and he is a black man. His daughter is mixed heritage. And she told him she had two choices of which university she'd go to. One was the University of York and the other one was Birmingham. And she chose Birmingham because she couldn't see any black people at the time when she chose at the University of York. So, you know, that became a topic of discussion that I had with all of our professors and all of our intake staff. That's why I'm there. And for me, the conversations I have with businesses who come and look for talent in our organisation, I am saying to them, we have an amazing pool of talent that's coming up. So don't just look in the same places that you always look. Come and talk to us. Come and talk to some of our students. Come and understand some of the skills that they've got. And the other thing I do want to say, which I think is really important, not one person was born being able to drive. Not one. Everybody had to learn to drive. And yet still, we find it hard in our hearts to say, well, do you know that person's got 9 qualities, but let's bring those 9 qualities into the business because they can learn the other one. Nope. We actually say, if they haven't got, we're not interested in. And what I want to try and do is get into the mindset of leaders and a lot of the HR professionals who have a script which says, if it doesn't say ABC, we're not having them. We can't have them. Because what I'm saying is your clients that you're dealing with will be like the gentleman who was on the stage and a Jay that we heard before, who is making those choices to contribute back into the community, not just about black, but about people of different ages, different backgrounds, especially the socio-economic backgrounds. It's fashionable now to talk about it, but it's always been there. It's always been there. In the square mile, we are moments away from young boys from Bangladeshi backgrounds, from Irish, from black heritage. And yet still, if they don't meet a certain criteria, we don't invite them into the city to have an interview. And what do? They go off and they sit in their rooms and they create these awesome programs or businesses, little businesses that become these seedling businesses into great businesses. And they say, off they go. And they go to the US. Or in today's world, they go to Africa where there are millions of billionaires out there. So we need to do things differently from a business perspective, the attraction of talent to our reputation as organisations and to be commercially and financially strong.
Isn't there something also in there about removing those barriers of access? So speaking from personal experience, I'm 52 now. I've been working for a long, long time. So I actually started work at 16 and left school with 3 GCSEs. And I think I'm just the sort of person who didn't thrive in school. And the reality is I'm very comfortable in this room talking today about my neurodiversity and my dyslexia, but it isn't something that I was always willing to share. So if I think about certainly technology, accountancy, many of the large corporates, we are still stipulating and asking for a level of accreditation qualification that simply isn't necessary. I mean, I've got a super smart and diverse team. Some of them are sat in the audience today. But the reality is they're professional sellers. We sell technology. And, you know, we're talking about really complex genome therapy. We are talking about life-saving drug dispatch and dispense. But we didn't need an MBA or a PhD to be able to transfer our skills and enter the industry. So I think if we're starting to look at the future of workplace inclusion, I mean, Mazik, do you think you can speak to any of the trends or the emerging themes around how we ensure we are delivering a more inclusive and accessible workplace for all?
Yeah, definitely. I think speaking to your staff is actually really underrated. Like, actually having conversations with them on where you feel like the business can improve, like not just keeping those conversations to like those in leadership or senior positions, because there are so many ideas that I may have or a colleague of mine may have that you would never have known of if you just, because you haven't spoken to us, essentially. I think the trends and the kind of things I'm starting to see, of course, like what you touched on, Tasha, was hybrid and remote working, because now there's like access to like global talent across the world and people can work for companies and be based in another country. So that's a pro. I think like the challenges, and I saw it actually in my own workplace where they'd hired somebody, but there was a strong like language barrier. So when it comes to like diversity and inclusion, you can hire people, but then he just did not speak the best English. He was very, very efficient and he tried his best, but it just hindered the productivity. And at times I kind of witnessed a kind of hostility between like the staff members. And it made me actually quite uncomfortable, because they kind of were maybe inadvertently like kind of not making fun of him, but they didn't make him feel as comfortable. And it was a slight sense of bullying. And these are the things that emerge when you're not paying attention to your staff and to the culture in your workplace. And a lot of this starts from the top. And whatever kind of culture there is in senior levels, in leadership within a company, it filters into the staff, and you got to lead by example. So I feel like there is opportunity, there are challenges, but also the whole thing about tokenism. And I don't want to feel like I'm just hired just based on the fact that I'm a black woman either, because it kind of contradicts the whole point of including me. I actually feel kind of weirdly excluded in a way. It's a weird kind of thought process, but I feel like I'm just being put there because I'm a minority, and it doesn't make me feel good either. So I think it's hard for businesses, because it's like you're trying to balance out recruiting diverse talent, but also not just recruiting someone based on their ethnicity or their background, etc. So
Sure,
it is tough, but I feel like there is so much more opportunity out there rather than challenges.
Can I just say something to that? Because I really feel quite strongly about this. I have a cleaner that doesn't speak a word of English. She has Google Translator. And I'm telling you, she cleans my house spotlessly. That's the first thing. The second thing, that I really feel quite strongly about, especially for employees where there is somebody who's different, I often think if there was a client that walked through that door that couldn't speak English clearly, would you exclude them? Of course you wouldn't. You would bend over backwards to try and understand what they were saying. And those are the things that we've got to start learning, right? That's where you create the sense of belonging, where people can walk into somewhere and think, actually, I don't know how to pronounce everybody's name, but do you know what I do? I write my little syllables and I work out how it should be so that I can pronounce their name. Because the most offensive thing that you do is if you cannot pronounce somebody's name clearly, you're telling them you don't belong here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree. I guess you're talking about setting an example and leading by example. But for me, I think, we hire to create culture, not for cultural fit. I think that's a mistake that many organisations make. And I think diversity of thought, diversity of experience is the most important aspect. I think it would be really great if we opened up and had some Q&A. There's some really big brains on the stage here. I think we could do with some engagement before we go into the next session. Does anybody have a question for anybody that's on the panel?
Don't be shy.
Ainsley, I'm sure I just saw your hands shoot up there.
Thank you, Chloe. Very kind. I'd love to know about the University of York and part of what you do, how you structure. Thank you. I'd like to know how you structure your workforce and your student engagement at the University of York from a diversity perspective.
So that's going to take us hours. And I'm going to try and give you a very quick answer to that. So the first thing I think is really important is when you look around the university to see that we recognise all the different people that come in. So if from a visual perspective, we have loads of international students, so that makes us look very diverse. What I want to do is get the diverse population from the UK coming to study into York. And for that to happen, they've got to see others that look like them that will come into the university. So that's some work that we're doing. When I look at things like our honorary doctorates, I don't just give them to a certain kind of person. We look at them and I go, well, actually, let's pick person A or person B. And I'm going to make sure that when we pick those individuals, they are real role models in terms of what they're doing so that the students will look up to them. And there should be nobody that when we give those doctorates to, people go, oh, it's just their mates or they've just done that. That's not what it's about. And the other thing for me is we make sure we have to educate our professors, our teaching staff. So we're going through at the moment, as most universities are, a whole load of really challenging times around the the Palestinian situation. And I'm really proud of how we've dealt with that. The first thing that happened to me on the first day after this was a client that I worked with years ago wrote me an email and a LinkedIn message. And she said to me, oh, well, Heather, I hope you can help me. My granddaughter goes to your university and I'm really worried with what's happened in Palestine and how this is going to impact her. And what's the university doing about that? And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is day 2. But my answer was, and it still is the same, it is our duty to look after every one of our students and our employees that work on there in an equitable way, and make sure that they're safe and they're well looked after. And that has been my stance all the way through, because at the end of the day, we're dealing with people. And if we don't remember that we're dealing with people, we very quickly get reminded that we're dealing with people, because the talent that's in those universities, they're very vocal. And so we've been able to have conversations with some of our students who feel very angry about what's happened. All of our professors have gone into that space so that they're comfortable with it. And so my final point is, apart from that, we have access to so many business people. Many of those business people are alumni of the University of York. So we're having conversations with them as well. Because the driving force for me, everyone says I'm based in York. No, I'm based in London, because most of those people sit in London. So once a quarter, I sit round the table with many business leaders and we're talking about what do we need to do to build much more fairer, equitable businesses and the actions that they need to take. So we need to keep the topic on the table, but we don't need to just keep it in little blocks. For me, it's about inclusion. Like we talk about technology, we talk about technology as one thing that's the golden thread that goes through a business. Inclusion is exactly the same for me.
Thank you, Heather. Edwin, we've got a question. Oh, there. Yeah, I think you're... Lady at the front.
You talked about those kind of 9 qualities and perhaps not having the one. And we know that in terms of getting people from backgrounds that would usually be excluded to apply, they look at that job description and go, I've got 9 of these, but I haven't got the one, so I'm not even going to bother to apply. How do we help those from backgrounds that would have usually been excluded to have the confidence to even apply? Because there seems to be a lot of untapped talent still.
So I can talk a little bit about what we're doing to address that. So it comes back to what you're putting out as an organisation. So I think it's really, and some touching on what Mazit was saying in terms of communication from the top. So be really open. I talk about the fact that I've got 3 kids. I talk about the fact that I'm Greek Cypriot and the heritage and the traditions that come with that. And so I think, so creating that sort of environment and then showcasing that on what you put out about your business is really important. And I think the other thing is also the fact that we embed all of that in what we're doing. So in all of our learning and development programs. And again, we showcase that in what we're putting out. So if somebody sees a job offer can I apply? They go onto your LinkedIn, they go onto your Instagram, and they get to know what your business is about. I think it's also important that, and we've changed like where we recruit our early talent, for example, because we weren't getting to enough of a diverse socioeconomic background. So we like proactively changed how we did it to ensure that we were, and that has had such an impact in the numbers then that we're now attracting. So it's a bit of both. It's a bit of proactively going after that, but also what you're putting out and how people can see you show up. So if they have got that niggle, they can go on, look at you and think, actually, I can relate to this. I'm going to go for it.
Thank you, Natasha. I think we've got time for just one more question.
Yes, good evening. I'm Stephanie Boyce, the former president of the Law Society of England and Wales.
I follow you on LinkedIn.
First person of colour, and so forth. It took me 4 attempts to get there. And so having done that, when I stepped down from office, plenty of people said to me, and the longest serving president as well, but lots of people said to me, as a person of colour, an ethnic minority, it is not often that having held a senior position that we then step down having done it successfully. Fact or fiction? I know it's fiction because I've done it. But in terms of your experience and the challenges that you have faced in leadership positions, what advice can you offer to those of us who are still coming up the ladder?
I think, for me personally, never underestimate the burden that you carry for the rest of your community. All eyes are on you, and some of those eyes are waiting for you to fail. I think an aspect of inclusion that is massively under-discussed is how many people from our own community have pulled the ladder up behind themselves. So if I look back at my career, every sponsor I've had has been a white, middle-aged man. Fact, because there's more of them. Yeah? So I think what we need to do is look deep inside each other. Mercy, you talked about sponsorship. It was the first thing that you talked about. Identify those people in your life, in your organisation, that need that support, and absolutely pay it forward. I am so thankful that somebody saw something in me. There were many things I couldn't do when I was leaving school, and I found a career. I've travelled the world. I've achieved some incredible things, and that is actually through the sponsorship of others and the trust that organisations have paid in me. So I think it is a burden, it is a weight, it is one we all carry. But I look around this room, and there are men and women in this room who have inspired me and helped me to push. And when I see you doing it, smashing it at the top of your game, I start to believe I can do it too. I hope that's answered your question.
Can I add to that as well? Because I think you've made a really valuable point. We need to see role models, and we need to connect in with those role models. And quite often we're too busy. So my mantra is, and anyone who knows me, is that if you come and ask me to mentor you, the first question I ask you before I ask you your name is, who do you mentor? And quite often, if people are bold enough and they tell me they don't mentor anyone, they haven't got any time, that conversation is a very short conversation. We don't get to because time is really important. We've got to invest. We've done it with women. We've got to do it with our young black men that are coming up who feel that they don't have anywhere to go. Young white boys are feeling that they're excluded because it's all about ethnicity and it's all about women. And by that, when I say young white men, I'm talking about the ones that are in their 40s as well who are struggling in the workplace because they're thinking it's all about the women. But I just really feel that we've got to help each other and help people. So it doesn't matter what colour you are. It doesn't matter what age you are. The driving force is if we're kind, and we've heard it twice talked about today, then that helps to change things. And my final point on that are leaders that are really leading from the front. So I think we heard Dame Sharon say that when the CVs come to her, if there's no diversity in it, she's asking why. And if leaders can do that and ask their teams, why are there no women? Why are there no people that come from different socioeconomic backgrounds in here? Where have you gone? Yeah. Actually, you're going to get scared to go to your boss and present those amazing, talented people that you think you've got, because they're going to ask you that question.
Great answer, Heather. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening so intently to this session. We're going to hang around for the networking drinks afterwards. There'll be lots of opportunity for more chat. I'm going to hand back to Sir Charles. Thank you.